but, were there moments when you felt just unmotivated, or struggled with the training, or you just didn't really want to get on that track or get up in the morning? And what was that process? How do you just overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, there was many a days where it was pouring with rain, and I'd just go, right, not training today, not going to train. And then by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd go, well, actually, my competitors, my rivals,
Mm,
were out there, and they've probably trained that day. So why would I be giving them a day?
yeah,
And I would then end up going out to do something. So, it's, even though you feel that individuality as well, but there is something about, the respect for your rivals that you had, and
mm,
they were the reason that spurred you on, even though you were trying to be the best that you could be, but they helped you to spur
of
you
course.
on, because
Yeah.
you would just say, well, they're probably training hard, they're probably doing this, and even though it was outside of your control, you got to make sure that you're putting that work in. It goes back to that work almost. But
It
also, I think,
does.
yes, we have to work hard, but we have to be clever with it, and you have to be productive with it almost, because you can't just, the biggest thing with the sport is overtraining. And I think the thing, as I got older, it was being smart about your training, and it was about, which sessions really work, rather than just, amounts, and
Mm,
how you, and understanding which ones are effective and which ones you need to tweak a little bit more. And and that's, again, the years of understanding. And Bruce always used to say, to stop the body from getting injured, we did the same basics, or often, for many, many years, and he would just increase the amount by probably, I don't know, 3 or 4% each year. It was just tiny
wow.
amounts, just the quantity of it, to make
Yeah.
sure that we were progressing, but without
Yeah.
overdoing it. So a real skill.
And that aspect of training smartly, not necessarily,
Yeah.
the amount of time. And that's very similar to musicians, where, when you're young, you're, practice for hours and hours and hours and hours,
Yeah.
and eventually you'll get somewhere. But actually, it is much more about how you practice. What are you aiming for within a 15-minute period, or
Yeah.
10 minutes or something. And that becomes very prevalent, once you actually start working, and you've got
Yeah.
so many of life's issues to deal with, and admin and one thing or another, and just living, and then those 10 minutes become incredibly precious,
Yeah.
and they're almost just like a razor sharp moment of time that you absolutely
Yeah.
pinpoint and focus on.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine. And I think the other thing I learned was just, the other aspects, and I guess it's a lot of what I'm talking about in my life in these days, but it's just how important recovery is, and, and quality recovery. We're not just sitting up talking about lounging on your sofa all afternoon. It is about, that switching off, and the body being able to repair
mm,
itself, and what does that look like. And that was a really important part towards the end as well. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I suppose mentally
Mm.
too. I know after a performance, you need time. And as you say, it isn't just, 5 minutes on a sofa. It's, you need time to feel the experience, not just think about it, but to really feel, and then consider the actions. It's very
Mm.
difficult to
Mm.
explain
But
unless
I
you're.
think maybe that's where we go back to our farming background. So for me, it would be getting back out into nature, and getting back out into the fields, which
Mm,
would allow me to reflect, and just sort of work out, and then to be able to go, what is the next sort of stage. And even now, I know that as soon as we could afford to, we found a bit of open space. I had that, because that was a really important part to, my recovery when I was training at that intensity. And it still
mm.
is now. And I think that's the understanding of having our backgrounds, maybe, but that's what we've learned of how to have that space in our minds to be able to be creative, and to
Mm,
clear, and to plan ahead almost.
absolutely. Can I ask, what is more stressful, to follow up a win, or to deal with injury?
Oh, gosh, I've never been asked that. That's quite interesting. They're both different. I mean, the hardest thing is I found was going from an Olympic champion to breaking the world record and a world champion, because it is that whole thing of being at the top and everybody gunning for you, and just people's expectation and pressure, and that's very different to being on the journey on the way up. And yeah, and that took a lot of adjustment, that took a lot of work and a lot of understanding, and learned a lot about myself and who I was as a person to be able to get myself in the right place to keep going again and again. But when you come back to injuries are, were tough. And I had a few injuries when I was early on in my career, but I then had injuries after I'd won the 4 majors. And I don't know whether I ever really got to really understand them. And I don't know whether that's because the passion had gone from the sport, because I'd achieved everything that I'd aimed to do. So I didn't have that fighting, I didn't have that determination that you need sometimes to get over injuries. So, having a year out with, surgery and bits and pieces, I found that I was struggling to get that fight back almost to go and get another Olympic gold medal. It was, so I think sometimes it is about, the passion that's still there, and if that's still in place, and you can't have that unless you can't achieve unless you've got that passion within that still. So it's tough, and I sometimes admire, I look at someone like Kelly Holmes, who won that double Olympic gold medal in Athens, and hers was driven by years of injuries and years of things going wrong, and even on the day, and it's something that I didn't have to do to that extent, and and massive admiration. But I guess what kept her driving is that she hadn't quite got there, and she was still wanting it. And whatever situation you're in, you still got to have that drive.
Yeah.